is digital transformation in today's world? Your turn.
That was an easy one.
Yeah.
Digital transformation is a process where you optimize your company's processes all the way from getting items in, so it's the input into the company, goods, whatever it might be, or services may be provided to the company, how they're being processed within the company, including the administrative work, how it goes out of the company, and how the consumer perceives it. So that is really the whole chain. The idea behind the transformation is not to buy new shiny computers. That is not the basis for it. The idea of the transformation is to provide, in the end, better customer service. In the days where customers have choices between different products, different companies, different providers, different suppliers, they just need to go online and find alternatives. So they don't have to come to you as a manufacturer, they can come to somebody else, very simply. So customers will make their choices based on mainly two things. One is how easy is it to get the stuff? So it's the convenience. The other thing is how expensive is it? So they will go for best experience in buying them and probably lowest price, although lowest price is a secondary thing. So in order for you to compete, you have to have your whole value chain optimized in a way that you first of all provide great service to the customer, that's one thing, but also provide your services or goods at a lower price.
Right.
So to optimize your overall business strategy or business processes, that's the transformation process, but the goal is to serve the customer better.
Right. So while we're also talking, I have to remind you that your turn is due. So it is also yours. And like I said, we have to keep the pressure on you. So we do both things simultaneously as much as possible. And this is also a transformation on the way interviews are conducted. At least our hope is. So in traditional businesses have a certain models that they follow, and they're usually very, very deep. So you have a board or a CEO or top level management, and then several levels down. For change to happen or for transformation to go through any particular department, it takes a very long time. Do you see that models in the emerging markets, the business models, are changing because the pace of work also has to change?
Models are changing, and they have to in order to stay globally competitive. A big issue, as you correctly said, is that now companies, especially from the top level, have to adapt to new ways of how work is being done. And one of the things that holds transformations back is either the fear or the inability, or basically not willing to, by the top management, to adapt to such changes. So fear is one of the big things. Companies, especially in the C-suite level, have members that are often, maybe wouldn't say advanced age, to say it very politely, and they may not be familiar with how processes work. They may also not be willing to hand over some control, some managerial control, to lower ranks.
Right.
So if I were to be, let's say hypothetically, if I were to be a CEO or a board member and I have full control over my company, I might be reluctant, and I know that I don't know exactly what digital transformation is and what is required. I might be reluctant to give that that empowerment to somebody who is lower in the pecking order,
right,
because I would give up some control. So I'd rather hold it back and thereby hold the whole company back of advancing.
Right. But at some point, so this isn't something that you go through a transformational change and it impacts your bottom line or top line growth immediately, right? So how do businesses make the decision that, oh, this is something that they must do because it'll be better for customers and because it'll impact their profitability? At what point does the revenue begin to kick in?
Depends on what you start out with. The revenue can kick in very quickly, actually. Now, there are simple processes that you can do when it comes to, for example, digitizing processes in your company, transforming things from paper documents and filing cabinets into, let's say, digital scans, for example, and online or cloud computing.
Right.
For this, now you make immediately space in your company where you get rid of all those ugly gray filing cabinets, and so you free up space. You can hire more people if you wanted to for higher productivity, or people who are currently doing low value jobs can move up to doing higher value jobs,
right,
which pretty much immediately will give you a higher profitability.
But then all of a sudden you have to pay attention to, you're not making physical purchases anymore, you're actually doing intellectual investment. So trainings, all of those things.
Yes,
right?
There's certainly a big role in trainings.
Right. So we were earlier talking about the future of work and how the technology infrastructures have changed that. Do you find that, again, especially in the emerging markets, these models of remote working actually work?
Yes, they do, and especially Pakistan is probably one of the better suited countries where this will work very well. The thing with remote working is, for many people, there's no need to be in the physical office together with other people who do the same work.
Right.
So a lot of stuff that administrators can do, they can do it from some other place, from home, from shared office space, as long as there's an internet connection.
Right.
You can I rarely go to meetings, so if I get approached by clients who ask me, can you come to our office for a meeting, I decline.
Okay.
Generally. So I said, I don't want to drive to your office, get 2 hours stuck in traffic for a 10-minute meeting, and then I drive back for 2 hours, get stuck in traffic again. That's a total waste of my time.
Right.
So I offer them, why don't we digitally transform this process, and rather having a physical meeting where we sit on the same table, we do a Skype meeting or a Google Hangout or something like that.
Yeah.
So there's a camera on every laptop, there's even a camera on your phone, so you can easily do a remote meeting doing
right.
So this is just a small example, but even for overall work process, this can be done.
But that's something that also my co-founder Talia insists. She doesn't like going out for meetings, and instead she will often say, let's do it by remotely or by Skype or something. But this is also a policy decision in the large companies, right? So oh god, heart attack. How do you think, how long does it take for a policy decision to be put into place by, let's say, middle tier management, and say that, yes, we're not going to go out for meetings until, it's like a closing deal or something?
In the end, it boils down to money.
Yeah.
If the top level can see that now these new processes will save them money or increase productivity, increase profits, then it's easy to do.
Right.
And now if you look at people working from home, there are multiple advantages. So they don't get stuck in traffic, coming to work, going to work, so they will be happier. So that's one thing. So you get a happy workforce.
Yeah.
A happy workforce is more productive, hopefully.
Right.
The other thing is that you can attract talent that you otherwise might not be able to do so.
Okay.
So there might be people, and that might be, especially for remote areas in Pakistan, something, where you have very, very good talents who cannot who cannot come to a big city because of, let's say, family commitment. They have kids there, or they have to take care of their parents, or whatever it might be. So these would be great talents, but they would be lost to the pool of employment. So if you were to allow those people to work from home, they could take care of their elderly, and they could still produce excellent work from a remote location.
So that's the benefit of remote, that work-life model. But on the downside, there's rarely a work-life balance if you are working from home. Coming to a physical office, you have a particular set 9 to 5, 9 to 6, whatever job you're going to have. At home, you don't have anything like that. And as we were talking about earlier, a colleague or a senior can actually message you and say, I have this great idea, but it's 3 o'clock in the morning. Will you please stop? So how do you find that the work-life balance is able to kind of settle in remote working models?
Okay, so discipline is a major part that I fully agree with. Now, if somebody works from home,
okay.
If somebody works from home, they have to be very disciplined.
Yeah.
So that is one thing. The other thing is that it may not be the salary may not be based on a 9-to-5 job. It may be based on productivity.
Right.
So something that they do, then they get paid on certain KPIs. So you produce so and so much, we get paid so and so much, simple like that. So that is one way. Another thing, what you mentioned is the communication part. So there has to be communication. Even for remote workers, there can be time set aside. Let's say every morning 9 o'clock we have a virtual meeting or something like that. What I don't like to see is, especially for top level management, that they abuse
the privilege.
The privilege.
Yeah.
Not only with remote workers, but also with workers amongst their own staff. Now there's time to work and there's time to play. Right. So people should have the right to their own life. Not only remote workers, but also workers in an office. So it is kind of unfair if the top level messages an employee at 3 o'clock in the morning and expects an immediate reply. So that culture, I think, has to be revisited and most likely changed. If I have a great idea with my staff, I may send it out at some ungodly hours, but I do not expect a response. The reason why I send it out is I might forget otherwise.
Yeah.
It's an age thing. So if I forget, then at least they have it, and then they can respond to it next day. So I don't put the pressure on them that, no, I send it out and I want a response now.
Yeah. So your turn. This is the response that I need. What about different industry verticals? How do you find change happening in those? So, for example, we take education. The pace that education takes place takes a long time, from the learning aspect and also from the curriculum development aspect. How do you foresee? I think you're going to lose. That's not the right piece to do. How do you foresee change happening? A change happening with in those industry verticals?
Take that. In industry vertical, well, the thing I hear a lot from top level management is that, whatever quite often what universities churn out in terms of, let's say, digital graduates is not what the university or what the industry wants. So there's a disparity between what graduates have learned in the university and what the corporate actually needs.
So the average undergrad will go through 4 years of study. That means the curriculum that has been put into the system has taken at least 2 years of development and certification. So we're about 6 years behind.
Yeah, 5 to 6 years behind.
All right. So now the pace of change and the pace of learning.
Yeah. So if the curriculum has been developed and then implemented to, let's say, as an undergraduate program, the students who get out of this undergraduate program have knowledge basically that is 5 or 6 years old.
Yeah.
And that is a big issue in the digital world. It may work for some subjects, but in digital it certainly does not. So universities have to rethink how they update their curriculum on the go, and companies have to also look into training their employees based on what the current requirements are.
Right.
I mean, even if you are a graduate and you work in a company, the knowledge that you have at that time may also outdate. Now, the digital knowledge has a fairly short shelf life.
So digital knowledge is very...
Yeah, it has a short shelf life,
yeah.
So it needs to be updated on a regular basis. So even if you hire staff and the staff has been with your company with at that time current knowledge, you still have to put an effort into keeping your employees up to date.
So the training budget of the new model companies, new model businesses, is considerably higher than it used to be in the past, right?
I hope so. I'm not sure.
That's how they should budget it out. What about in let's say the field of the industry vertical of media? How has that changed? Changed the way content is produced and news is produced for it to be consumed. How has that business changed? So much focus, my goodness.
I think that business has changed a lot, especially when it comes to the monetization part. And in the end, it is customer satisfaction. That's what I mentioned earlier with the digital transformation part. The customer is the one who calls the shots in the end. So whatever you do, it's just for the customer. And the same goes for the media industry. So media industry, especially from print, moves a lot to online. But online is very difficult to monetize. So what you can monetize by attracting more eyeballs. And eyeballs come to an online news portal not necessarily for the news, but a lot for gossip and politicking and entertainment. So which I would see as low value news, but that's what attracts the eyeballs.
Yeah.
So that is one way of creating revenue, but of course the overall content that is then provided and being consumed is of, I think not high value. So paywalls is still something that some companies or media companies need to consider.
Right.
So I personally, I subscribe to a news portal and I pay money for it on an annual basis. It's an affordable amount. But that way I don't get all that low value news. I get stuff that I think is worthwhile consuming.
Right. But even for that change to happen, you're looking now at a behavioral change from the consumer angle, as well as from the business angle. The consumer angle takes much longer to change than does the business model itself. So how can companies drive that behavioral change with hundreds of thousands of customers that they may or may not have ever met in person?
I mean, it's difficult to drive customers. Customers make their own choices. Customers have their own ideas. Customers have an ever-changing behavior in terms of their wants and needs and requirements.
Yeah.
So as I said, in the end it comes back to customers. So if somebody comes to me and asks me for a 5-year digital plan or a 10-year digital plan, I just laugh at them because I can't even see past 6 months. Because you never know how customer engagement is going to change, how customer behavior is going to change.
Yeah.
So it's difficult to drive this. So you have to. It's basically a reactive thing.
Yeah.
So companies, media companies, or any other company have to have a listening ear on the ground. Let's say through social media, where they get the feedback from customers, what customers want at this moment, and have to adapt to it.
But then hasn't the very nature of advertising agencies changed also? Because that's not what... There was a time when ad agencies kept a pulse on what was good and what was bad, what sold and what didn't. Now it's not them. So the very ecosystem of advertising and marketing has changed completely. Correct?
Yes, it has. Yes.
Right. So who makes that decision now?
Algorithms make that decision to be, so computer programs make that decision.
Yeah.
If you look at, let's say, Google or Facebook, they mine your behavioral data. So if you go to Google, Google keeps total track of which websites you visit, how long you spend on a particular website, what search terms you use, and so on and so on. So this information is going to be used by Google to provide, how they say it, customized or personalized information or advertisements to you. I think I'm about to lose. There's nothing to lose here.
I bet those are words that you never say. I'm about to lose.
I'm about to lose.
Yeah.
But I shall not give up yet. But I think I have to. So it is no more humans that make that decisions.
Right.
It's algorithms. So you're being monitored left, right, and center, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, with everything that you do online and offline. Offline meaning that
one you can't do because it's the foundation level. Online and offline.
So offline also means that you're being tracked in shopping malls, for example.
Yeah.
So there are cameras that look out for you. I worked with a startup company where we talked about, at least prepared for the pitch, where we looked at when you walk into a shopping mall, you see all these TV banners.
Yeah.
So it's not a fixed banner; it's a TV that has varying advertisements on it for shops within that mall.
Okay.
So we put a camera on top of that mall. That was the idea. Put a camera on top of that TV screen, and did facial recognition. So we took note of the face, not the individual. So no personal information.
Right.
And then we had cameras in shops as well to then measure who sees that advertisement, who goes into the shops.
Okay.
And we had another camera over the cash register, so we could then verify or identify who bought something based on the advertisement.
Okay.
So people were shown different kinds of advertisements over time, and then you could optimize for even a physical advertisement if you wanted
Right.
to.
I'm just going to take a step back because I think this is about to topple over. What is the average age of an employee or a team member that is ideal to take the knowledge that they gain from university or work experience and also bridge the gap between the digital and the traditional age?
I don't think it's an age thing. I think it's more something between are you open to it or are you not? So I know young people who don't like being stalked online, being always online. And I know elderly people. My dad was one of those who are consuming digital media on an almost daily basis. So my dad, when he was in his late 70s, he taught how to use the internet, how to use email in an old folks home. So even at his own advanced age, he was maybe almost a digital native, if you want.
Okay.
So it's not really an age thing, it's really an attitude thing at the end of the day.
So how should HR managers account for that attitude in their interviews and recruitment?
One thing that companies have to look out for is when they recruit is whether that person will fit into the overall company culture.
Right.
And if the culture that you try to get in the company is something that is more digitally advanced, then the new recruit has to fit in. So it's not only in terms of their subject matter knowledge or their skill sets, it is more about culture. Will that person fit in?
Right.
So that's no longer an age thing. It is, as I said, it's an attitude issue then.
But it all comes back down to skill development and how up to date your people are. So we're part of the knowledge economy and the information economy. I think that's not fair. Part of the knowledge.
I still have to put it down.
Yeah. Okay. Part of the knowledge economy is that did I really invite you in for this game? I wish somebody would have told me that you were actually good at this.
I haven't done this for ages.
All right. There's always a first time there. There we go. You are also a Google certified instructor.
Yeah.
Right? Educator. Google certified educator. How does that help you to become? Does that help you in your training, or does that help you to work with schools and kind of bring them up to date?
Both. Part of the education, the certified educator program is that so it includes 5 certifications, individual certification before you get them. But it helps you to learn about Google products and how to share that knowledge with schools, educational institutions, but anybody who wants to know about it. So that includes courses that we run, that includes individuals.
So that's how it helps you. How about the different markets that you conduct seminars and trainings in? Which market do you find the most challenging to bring up to date?
The challenge is again personal. When we run trainings, especially for the operations staff, some of the operations staff is being sent by their company to undergo that training, and they don't really have an interest in it. That's more of an issue.
And how do you?
It comes down to.
Oh no! Jenga champion. I was just trying to be nice to you.
Oh, thank you very much. I appreciate it. It's part of the Pakistani hospitality, isn't it? So I really appreciate it.
Sorry, the markets that are most challenging.
Markets that are fast developing. Those are, in terms of verticals, difficult. Very fast moving are banks, for example, hospitality, because that's where consumers have their first point of entry through an online platform.
Right.
Retail is getting there as well. Those are difficult verticals because technology is changing so fast. So companies send people for training, and what they learn may be outdated a year down the road. So if employees ask for additional training or being updated, then the company may say, well, you went for training just last year or 2 years ago, why again?
Right.
But since it is such a fast-moving field, you have to keep yourself up to date.